Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little briefly about advanced setting. These are for people with digital SLRs, and these are just some rules, some guidelines to follow when you're shooting, especially in variable lighting conditions. Remember, if you have a point and shoot, this might not apply to you as much. We're going to talk a little bit about exposure compensation with the digital SLR using the full manual mode. Right now I have it in aperture priority, which is kind of a semi-automatic setting, and that's what we were using earlier to shoot traffic. What I have is exposure compensation right here. It's a little plus minus button, and when I select it I can go high or low. Remember, you want to be somewhere in the middle of this guide. That would give you ideally the best compensated exposure. However, maybe you want to bracket a little bit, or maybe you want a little more flexibility. Perhaps you want to have a longer shutter speed or a slower shutter speed, and that will kind of give you a little bit more flexibility in lower light conditions. So if I switch my camera over to full manual mode, you're going to see the only thing that happens in this guide is that my light meter is going to read. It reads like a light meter, and we want the little line to be somewhere in the middle. The F number that you see here, that's your f-stop. That stands for aperture. And that's a little confusing. The higher the number on your f-stop, the smaller the hole. And vice versa. The smaller the number, the larger the hole. The number to the left, the 1/60th, that's how long the shutter speed is. And so if I hold down my button halfway, you can see that when I go to take a picture, it's going to be exposed properly because my light meter reads at right in the middle of that guide. So I know that my shutter is going to be open for about 1/60th of a second. Now if I change my ISO, or I'm sorry, if I change my aperture and I make, say, my aperture as small as possible, and I hold down my button, you can see that I'm way underexposed. And to get that exposure correct, I have to have my camera, or sorry, my shutter open for almost 6 seconds. Or sorry, 1/6 of a second. And it made still a fairly dark image. So I'm going to show you a picture or an example we're going to shoot now of an underexposed, an overexposed, and properly exposed picture. Okay, we're going to take a picture using full manual mode of this Lincoln landscape, and I've already set my focus. I'm already in focus, and I've set up on the smallest hole opening on my aperture, an f-stop 22 for this particular lens. Different lenses have different apertures, but mine goes to 22. And if I hold my button down halfway, you'll see that I'm way underexposed, but I'll take the picture anyway, and maybe you can see it, maybe not. It's way underexposed. So I could tell that at f22, at a really small opening, I need to change my I need to have this, open a lot more, for like 1/5 of a second now. So let me go past that. I'm going to go way up, have it open for like a second, roughly. You see how long it took? And it looks okay, but actually if we go and put it on the computer, you might see it's a little bit overexposed. Lastly, I'm going to try and get the exposure correct based on my light meter. Looks like that should be money. And I got a pretty good looking image here. And if I go back and preview it, the colors are rich, still at a faithful setting, and it looks good. The farther open you have that aperture, the more light you're letting in, and then therefore you have to have a shorter shutter speed. It's better to have the camera on a tripod like I have right now and utilize the stability that you have. But if you're out there shooting without a tripod, you're going to have to do something completely different in order to get a crisp image. So I'll show you here. I'm going to need to change my aperture. I'm gonna need to bring it down, go about halfway in between its lowest setting and its highest setting. So I think that's probably somewhere around here. And you can see that I'm way overexposed. So I'm gonna change. Now it's only gonna be open for 1/10 of a second. The reason is I'm not gonna be all that stable, no matter how stable you think you are. If your camera, if the lens is open, the shutter is open for a second, it's gonna be blurry no matter what. So because I'm on the fly here, this is the beauty of having a manual mode. I can now adjust. I got a nice looking image. And so the camera, the shutter speed went for a lot shorter of a time, but I have a different aperture to compensate for that. So that's advanced compensation for exposure. Especially in a night scene like this, it gives you a lot of flexibility. However, this is for advanced users.